A drone strike has just targeted the Emirati Baraka nuclear facility, shaking a ceasefire already described by Donald Trump as being on life support. The American president returns from Beijing without any substantial agreement. No breakthrough on the Iranian dossier, no Chinese commitment on the Strait of Hormuz, and the Hormuz choke point remains under Iranian control. The American naval blockade has not changed the equation. Iranian oil still finds its path to the markets through opaque Chinese channels. Washington is no longer asking how to open Hormuz, but how to escape the impasse without American deterrence losing its luster. A Congress in rebellion. 10 votes in 10 weeks to stop the war. Pentagon generals harboring doubts. Gulf countries seeking options beyond the American brief. A fracturing NATO with Europe sitting out the war and Spain closing its airspace. In short, Donald Trump is caught between the hammer of domestic dissent and the Iranian lock. He is left with only two choices, both of them difficult. Return to war at an exorbitant cost, or accept negotiations that would consecrate a strategic failure on the eve of the midterms. Trump's Iranian dilemma. We'll discuss it with our panel right now on All 24 News channel. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to All 24 News special coverage on the Iranian war and the summit between Xi Jinping and Trump. And to debate this tonight, we are joined by four leading analysts. Dr. Cyril Vedashovin, a senior advisor and energy analyst at the Blue Water Strategy from Arnhem. He's also a geopolitical strategist with a sharp focus on commodities, maritime, supply chain, geopolitics, and security in the EMEA region, also working on strategy, investment risks, and foresight scenarios. Hello there, Professor, and thank you for agreeing to be with us. Professor Cyril.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for agreeing to be with us tonight. Also, we're joined by Dr. Jagal Salman, politics and governance experts, a principal fellow at ODI Global from London. Hello there, sir, and thank you for agreeing to be with us.
Hello there. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. And we're also honored to have Dr. Piotr Pietrzak, a political analyst at the Vistula University, also Statu Nascendi think tank from Warsaw. He's an international relations theorist and also a political author. Hello, sir, and thank you for agreeing to be with us.
Good evening, Karim. Thank you much for your kind invitation. I appreciate that.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for honoring our invitation. And we're also honored to have Mr. Mohammed Krissassi, a geopolitical observer and financial analyst from New York. Hello there, Mohammed, and thank you for agreeing to be with us.
Always my pleasure to be with you. And again, thank you for the invite.
It's our pleasure, Mr. Mohammed Krissassi. All right, let's begin the debate with you, Dr. Vedashovin. A drone strike targeted the Emirati Baraka nuclear plant this Sunday, the first such attack on a nuclear facility in the Arabian Peninsula. The Strait of Hormuz remains virtually frozen. The American blockade is strangling Iranian ports, yet super tankers sail in stealth mode while Iranian oil continues to flow through Chinese channels. Is the American maximum pressure strategy turning into a demonstration of strategic impotence, let's say, on the energy front? How do you read it?
First of all, I don't think it's a sign of a U.S. impotence. It's more that there is at present a situation in which the U.S. is to do next. Options are not extremely wide. So to see that a certain
Dr. Cyril
LNG
Vidashovin, sorry to cut your train of thoughts, but unfortunately we're experiencing a technical issue with the sound. It's cutting out. So let me just have the team call you back. And meanwhile, I redirect the question to Dr. Jago Salman. Dr. Salman, the Trump administration has rejected Iran's 14 points counter proposal as completely unacceptable, demanding, among other things, the delivery of 400 kilograms of enriched uranium to the United States and refusing any war reparations. Deputy Minister, actually the Iranian Deputy Minister shot back that lifting the blockade and sanctions constituted the maximum requirements here for a lasting peace. Given this gulf, let's say, between a logic of capitulation and a logic of compromise, is there still any viable diplomatic space, or has perhaps the Pakistani mediation already been condemned?
Thank you. Look, just to take a point, the binary choices here between capitulation and compromise, there is a third option, which is neither gets taken, and that we get neither peace nor war coming out of this scenario. Arguably, the Pakistani and Omani mediation has already delivered great results for the population of Iran and for the neighboring region, with the declaration that Epic Fury, the military operation Epic Fury, came to an end after the Secretary of State Rubio called it about 11 days ago. In this situation, it's important to keep the dialogue channels open. However, looking at the gulf between the different positions and also the huge lack of clarity that we seem to be having between these two positions, it's very hard to see how this can result in a sustainable peace. What we've seen in other theaters where the US has engaged, where a quick, short, sharp victory has not been achieved, they have preferred a position of maintaining neither peace nor war. And I think there's a real fear in the markets, in many governments in the West and beyond, that this is exactly what we're drifting towards, where we don't get a cessation, we don't get a military conclusion, but we are stuck with high inflation, interruptions to geoeconomic trade and shipping, and that we remain in this position effectively until after the midterm elections in November.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the escalations, this leads me to you, Dr. Pietrczak. The ceasefire with Iran does not apply apparently to Lebanon, where we see the Zionist entity continuing to bomb despite an extended 40-day truce, killing 11 people in a single day and also raising an ambulance center. So the NGO Green Southerners is documenting the systematic destruction of churches, mosques, and archaeological sites even, a methodological, or let's say a methodical, uprooting of memory. As the ICC investigates allegations of institutionalized sexual violence against, for example, Palestinian detainees, how can Europe continue to remain silent without its normative credibility being definitively annihilated, let's say?
Karim, I'll give you that. That's a very long, extended question, and it's let's say, to start with, there's nothing romantic about any war, and the war in Iran, the war against Ukraine, Russian war against Ukraine, this war shouldn't be happening in the first place. From the perspective of someone who teaches just war theory, I will tell you that those conflicts shouldn't be happening in the 21st century. Yes, there is sexual violence happening in this conflict. The conflict which is in Iran wouldn't happen without the October the 7th, 2023. That's for sure. There is a link between that. But the broader question is why Donald Trump basically started this war in the first place. Who gave him the legitimate concern, or who gave him the right to act on behalf of international community to basically strike Iran. I understand the argument of human rights activists who suggest that, well, the Iranian regime is out of place, and the very fact that Iranian regime was mistreating its own people, killing thousands of people at the end of the 2025 and the beginning of January 2026. This is a probable cause to start the war in Iran for sure. But yes, you are completely right that Benjamin Netanyahu is out of control. What he did in Gaza for the last 3 years is clear act of genocide, and I completely disagree with that. The policies which he started, basically, it's you cannot justify that. You cannot justify what is happening in Gaza. You cannot justify what is happening against Palestinians, and you can definitely not justify what is happening in Iran or in Venezuela, as a matter of fact. So those issues are completely interlinked. And for sure, we can draw the link between what is happening in Gaza, in West Bank, in Iran, in Venezuela, and in Ukraine, as a matter of fact. For someone who is strongly against war, I will tell you that disturbing to anyone who is basically concerned with the human rights of non-combat populations. And I teach that to my students, basically, you know. Well, first check for motivation, and next investigate just in bellum, which is the because we cannot stop the war once it broke out, but at least we can make these people accountable, how they wage wars, and basically what is happening in Iran and what's been happening in Gaza is definitely concerning. So yes, this would be my extended, elaborated question to your short question.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pierre Tsak. And now let me move to the Trump-Xi summit here that ended up without any strategic breakthrough, according to many analysts. And here, my question is to you, Mr. Mohammed Krissasi. Analysts are describing the Trump-Xi summit as an exercise in political, let's say, stagecraft, technically aircraft contracts and soybeans, but no progress on the Strait of Hormuz, tariffs, nor Taiwan. Yet Trump claimed Xi had agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, while Beijing actually remained silent for that matter. So have the markets already priced in the fact that China will not play the mediating role Washington had hoped for, and that the energy impasse is here to stay? How do you read it, Mr. Mohammed Krissasi?
Well, in a short answer, is a total disaster on every point that you just named. But before I can answer your question, let me talk to my predecessor, the Dr. Pierre Tsak, who said that the causality of Iranian war is linked directly as a causality of October 7, 2023. As a professor at the university, I don't know what you are teaching to your student, but did you know that Gaza was under an open sky for 75 years, a prison open sky? Did you know that it was something like 70,000 people that were killed before and after, totally, I mean, after the October 7, 2023. Dear Dr. Pierre Tsak, I would like you to do some factuality, please, just for the sake of the integrity. I cannot be silent. Then you talk, yes, the human right in Iran, and it was justified to go to them. Number one, Mr. Peter, if you have to respect the human right, you should see what Israel was doing for the last 75 years to his neighbor. That's number one. Number two, when you talk about human right, look how they are treating the Palestinian, even in Israel, and the prison. And just recently, you have an article in the New York Times that they talk about the rape of the prisoner of Palestinian. And then, Mr. Pierre Sack, if you want to talk about human rights, look what are doing the settler to the Palestinian. And I would like you to talk about that as a human right. Now about Ukraine. Ukraine is a war of Europe, like the Second World War II, by the way. It's related. But now, when you are talking about this, dear Mr. Peter Sack, I'm sorry, but I have to take this one. Now, to answer the question to you, my dear friend Karim, yes, it's a total disaster. You know, the president of China didn't say that he was going to open the Detroit of Hormuz, simply because he never wanted to be closed. And it was before this war of Israel, USA against Iran, everything was fine. We talk about the territorial water. The territorial water is recognized as within the 12 miles. And even if you go to the law, we have a law that is calling the continuity of the international law, which has another 12 miles. So this is totally illegal to talk about that. Now, regarding the meeting, even here in the States, when you look at the news, everybody agrees, except, of course, maybe Fox News, that Trump was really coming empty-handed from this meeting. But not only that, it was also a talk at the first speech of the president of China. What he was talking about? He was talking about Taiwan. And it was very clear that he was asking Trump to stop the delivery of the arm to Taiwan. If not, it can be further disposition from China, meaning they are going simply to defend, to go and take care of Taiwan. So, and Trump didn't answer that. Matter of fact, they stopped the delivery of the arm that's supposed to go to Taiwan within the 2 or 3 months. That's one thing. The other thing about the economical thing, you know, we talk about the Boeing, the 500. No, they didn't sign it. I think they just accept about 200, and he's not signed yet. And then about, you know, also Trump was asking the president of China to accept the agricultural product of America, which the president didn't shy away, tell him, well, you are the one who imposed the tariff on us. Mm-hmm. So when you look at this, I think the summit was a total disaster. It was even an humiliation for Trump, and is a nouveau game in town now. America is not anymore the superpower. The superpower is coming now is China. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed Kurisasi, for answering the second part of my question. Well, your comment actually needs, let's say, a balance comeback here. So I have to get back to Dr. Pierre Sack to clarify his point. I mean, in his defense, he said all wars are bad and they should not happen in the 21st century. And he just said that the wars are linked, the one in the Gaza Strip, the one waged by Benjamin Netanyahu. So technically, there is no difference if we see a war waged in Iran or in Gaza, nor in Ukraine. Isn't that so, Dr. Piotr Sack?
Yes, I just wanted to respond to this suggestion. I wasn't deflecting the question. I was just pointing out that basically there is a link, and all sides who are waging wars, they are responsible for their actions. And if there are human rights violations, gross negligence, and basically the ethnic cleansing, this is something which should be pointed out. And you know, Palestinians are not without the fault, as a matter of fact, because when we are talking about the rape and rape of inmates, Palestinian inmates in Israeli prisons, let's talk about what actually happened on the October the 7th, because the Hamas actually raped, kidnapped and killed hundreds, if not thousands, of Israelis. And it's a perpetual, basically, violence which is waged by both sides, as a matter of fact, ever since 1948. What's happened in 1972 in Munich? And what's happened with the Black September, killing Israeli athletes who competed during the Olympic Games in Munich. Well, we all know what happened, and then there was war, there was escalation. But my point is that the parties which are waging wars shouldn't be waging in the first place, and when they actually do wage wars, they should be held accountable for their actions. So there is a clear link between what is happening in Gaza, in West Bank, and in Iran now. And
Dr. Pierzak, what you said is that Hamas actually committed certain crimes and so on. Well, I'm not in anyone's, let's say, side to defend this or that, but then really there were no proofs that such crimes, especially sexual violence.
They were recording that, man. They were recording the.
They were verified technically. We have had a lot of reports.
Rapes.
So we have had a lot of
families
reports.
who lost their relatives. They could see online how the Hamas members were raping Israelis. So we cannot deny that. Hamas was basically broadcasting it. So when there is in my country, in Poland, when we say that when you hit the table,
let's see with the fact checkers. Maybe we're just gonna have to verify that, because when it comes to crimes, there were a lot of crimes that were documented. I mean, through social media and so on. And now the facts and the reality cannot actually be hidden wherever you are in the world. And here the link between.
And who was supporting Hamas and Hezbollah? It was Iran. So, and who is supporting Houthis in Yemen? It is Iran. So there is the causal link between these wars. And I'm sorry, but no one will cry after the Ayatollahs in Iran. They are oppressing their own people. They are killing them by thousands. So for these reasons, as a humanitarian, I say that Trump was actually right to intervene in Iran. He didn't have a authorization from the United Nations and the UN Security Council, but we as an international community, we cannot actually act. We are just staying idle. We watch what is happening, and then we just say, oh, no one did happen. I'm a scholar who spent good 15 years of my life investigating what was actually happening in Syria, and trust me, ever since 2011, the international community was watching how Bashar al-Assad was mistreating its own people. Hundreds of thousands of people died because international community didn't do anything. Yes, Trump is violating international law, but there is a fundamental problem with international law when the tyrants, when the dictators are in power. And the Iranian regime, ever since 1979, was oppressing its own people. And it was oppressing not only its own people, but the people around the world.
Do you think it is actually wise to bomb people to freedom?
No, I don't agree that bombing people is a wise thing. I completely agree that bombing people is a solution. Of course not. As a humanitarian, I'm a strong believer in humanitarian intervention on the basis of separating sides which are basically fighting against each other. I'm in favor of a solution which is basically in Cyprus. Ever since 1974, Cyprus is separated into two sides, the Turkish one and the Greek one, and the sides which were basically meant to fight for generations. Ever since 1974, you can count the victims of Cyprus conflict on the hands of the fingers of one hand. So if there is a problem with Iran, if there is a problem with West Bank and Gaza, there is a broader issue here, and we need to go into the bottom of the broader issue. And the problem is the war itself. People who wage war shouldn't be waging war in the first place.
Thank you, Dr. Pierzak. Point clear. Let me now bring back Dr. Cyril Vedashovin. We had a technical issue earlier, and I go back with the first question, Dr. Cyril Vedashovin, regarding the uranium agreement you were analyzing. Please continue.
First of all, I'm amazed about what I'm hearing. So, but I'm not going into this. But looking at Iran and the US, we will see a stalemate, which will most probably end with an end solution in which the issue is not solved at all. First of all, shipping will be hit by any action of Iran or the US. Secondly, the ultimate idea that the US/Israeli action will remove the regime ASAP is, I think, an idée fixe, because to do that, there will need to be an invasion of Iran, and that's right now not an option at all. And to expect that China will interfere in 2026, for China, the ultimate, most positive solution is that the US attention is for 2026 and 2027 focused on the Iranian issue, which will take the focus on South China Sea away, which is to the advantage of China. And the Xi-Trump summit was a disaster, mainly because the outcome was way below.
Dr. Vidashovin? Seems that we can't hear you properly, Dr. Vidashovin. Let's just try to fix that technical issue again. Let me readdress this question to you, Dr. or Mr. Mohammed Krissasi. If we look at the prices of oil, it reached $118 a barrel in late April. And the price at the pump in the United States has hit $4.50 a gallon, or a 50% increase since the start of the war. Iran is actually threatening to unveil a professional toll mechanism for transiting the Strait of Hormuz. If Tehran institutionalizes this control, Mr. Mohammed Krissasi, are we not witnessing the birth of a new maritime order in which international law is replaced by the de facto sovereignty of a regional power, watched powerlessly by Washington?
Well, if you go to that line of thought, we are going to be in the global trade war. I don't think China will accept that 90% of our resources are going to be disturbed, not by the Iranian, because with China, I think it's not going to be any problem, but because of the chaotic situation that Trump created. Now they are going to find other route, as they did in 1972. So it's not I think it's just maybe a question of 2 or 3 months. Yes, it will increase the price at the oil point, but again and again, the market will stabilize itself. And the last time we were talking about OPEC, now they are going to the free market. So yes, the OPEC market right now, the brut is about between 115 and 120. I think it can be up to, let's say, 135, 140, and then it's going to come down when all will settle here. Because I think this situation, you cannot continue to be nourishing that kind of chaotic nonsense of America regarding the market. You know, we have the tariff with China, and another day he wants to go to Greenland, and now he's going to go to Cuba, and then we know the what you call it, the episode of Venezuela. All this is affecting the world trade business. And today you cannot have a good world trade business if you don't have the security. Now we are talking, before I heard again this kind of nonsense about, you know, the human right and what as Israel is so beautiful and not doing the right thing, and America doing the wrong thing, going bombarding Iran to save their people. That's nonsense for me. I'm sorry to be so brutal. But going back to the economy, because of that, and don't forget, America doesn't have any border with Iran. It was just to please Israel. Why? Not because Trump loved that much Israel. I think they are, and I'm not a complotist, I think we have to put here, maybe they are blackmailing him for whatever he did before. And it's possible, more and more now we're talking about it. Israel have the problem with, Netanyahu have the problem with the tax and the corruption, and Trump have the problem with the Epstein file. So there, you know, it was very good. We are going to do a war and everything is going to be fine. Well, unfortunately, Iran is not Venezuela. Iran defended themselves, they were resilient, and they make shut up Israel after 1 month, and it was a truce, not because, you know, they wanted it, just because they cannot sustain what was going on with them. But again and again, the economical factor here, we have to look for stability. The Detroit of Hormuz, we are going to find other route. You know, this is the nature of the business. It's going to be a little bit costly, but the market is going to stabilize and go back to its point. But one point I was saying, and I should say that, Iran was always the target of America because of Israel. 1953 with Mossadegh, 1979, 2008, and 2026. And October 7, 2023 have nothing to do with it. This is all nonsense. I'm sorry to say that. Nothing to prove it. And as you said before, rightly, Karim, they were when they did the October 7, 2023, all the news, and I am in America, they said they said the Palestinians were raping kids, they were raping women, they were killing babies. All this come not through. Absolutely. Even the New York Times was doing article about that. So don't come to me and tell me that the media are reporting this. I don't have the proof of that. What I have the proof of, this war should not happen. It was for the last 40 years, Israel, Mr. Netanyahu going to the UN, showing some picture and saying, oh, this is the bomb. In 2 weeks, Israel is going to have the bomb. But it was 40 years ago, up to now. And the result of it is Iran never have the nuclear bomb. Iran have the right to have the nuclear, you know, for his economy. And also, since they cannot be trusted, neither of them, they go to the negotiation, they give them 24 hours or 10 days, and 10 days, and they attack them. Why you should not have it? Who dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? It's not Iran. Who did that? America. And America now is going to war by proxy. The gentleman was saying, oh, Hezbollah is Iran. Iran have his, Hezbollah, have his own alliance with Iran. It is true. Like America have alliance with who? With Israel. And it cost me as an American citizen, every single day is 2 billion of my taxes going to Iran to sustain a war that, you know, I cannot, as an American, I cannot accept. And Israel, if tomorrow America oblige Israel to come back to their sense and sit down and turn, is going to be peace. Jordan signed a peace with Israel, Egypt signed a peace with Israel, even Saudi Arabia 20 years ago. I repeat myself, Saudi Arabia 20 years ago was trying to make a peace treaty with Israel, but each and every time, they don't respect it. The proof is here. The ceasefire is not respected in Gaza. Every single day we have 10, 20, 30, 40 kids. I'm not talking about other things. Kids killed under this fear. So don't come to me and tell me the media. But now to come back to the economy, because this is what you are talking about. The economy is going to go back. You remember when you were doing the first emission, I told you the war will stop. It's not going to remain. And it happened. It's not because I'm a devil. It's just a question of, this is the history of the economy. You cannot sustain that. When you have your economy that is dependent on Iran for 40, 50, up to 90% like with China, nobody will accept that. This is why you have, even in Europe, Spain, for example. Why did they say we have to stop this? And they stand up to Trump. They say, you initiate this war, you have to pay for it. But now is a trade war that you are doing, and you cannot accept that.
Perfect.
We
Since
cannot
you
look at-
mentioned the cost of the war, let me ask these questions to Dr. Salman, Mr. Mohammed Krissasi. The
Sure.
Financial Times, Dr. Salman, and the Wall Street Journal are actually reporting a $45 billion hole in the U.S. economy between rising energy costs, 3.8% inflation, and 30-year Treasury yields at 5%, a level not seen since 2007. American households, as Dr. Mohammed Krissasi was saying, American households are enduring a double squeeze on their finances. Now, is the war in Iran turning a geopolitical crisis into a systematic risk for the U.S. economy and, by extension, for the global economy and in Europe, where you're based?
So, Karim, look, the short answer is yes. There's no question about that. But I wouldn't do myself justice if I didn't refer a little bit back to some of the previous conversation. I think we're in an even more dangerous situation than we're describing. A number of states, Israel, definitely, the US, Russia, but others as well, have come to the conclusion that international order is no longer benefiting them. And their response has been to use force, to use war as a means of policy. But not just any war. War, once you've got past the hurdle of saying that international order isn't working for you, what's happened at the same time is a complete substantive violation of all the subsidiary laws of international humanitarian law of how war is conducted. And we can argue whether these wars are in any way just or not. Definitely, the source of instability in the Middle East at the moment coming from Israel is vast, and the ability to pull the US into that instability has proven detrimental. But let's be clear what the summit in China was about. It wasn't about the Straits of Hormuz. This was a long-planned visit, long before the Operation Epic Fury. This summit was about economic trade, mutual benefit between the US and China. And in that light, it has been a complete failure because, as all the previous speakers referred to, no substantive deals were made. And instead, what we're learning and what we hope we're learning, Trump and the US and others are learning, is the absolute limits of military force in obtaining their objectives. The reason this is so dangerous is what's happening is with the limits of force in obtaining their objectives, and they're pushing, and I'm not as optimistic as the previous speaker. Yes, things will stabilize to a certain degree, but according to the IMF, 3%, 4% of inflation in a very limited scenario will be added to the costs of shipping, will be added to the UK's inflation target, which has already been missed. And this is coming on top of really stagnant economic recovery from COVID. It's coming on top of the inflation caused by the Russian war. So what you're seeing in multiple parts of the world is that the use of war by the US, by Israel, by Russia, is beginning to impose serious costs on the US economy, the UK economy, absolutely, the European economies. And even this does stabilize to a certain degree. What we're seeing is a world that is going into a more violent equilibrium, where governments are stuck. The government in the UK is stuck. It is stuck between stagnant growth. It is stuck on inflation, on oil prices and fertilizer and gas and other commodities. It's stuck on a high benefits bill, some of it coming down from COVID. And it's stuck on the incredible demand that they increase military expenditure. And what you're seeing amongst the population is when you survey populations in Europe or the UK, populations don't want to choose in this situation, and they're creating a series of political crises. You see it now in the UK with the debate around the Prime Minister and his stepping down and his replacement, but you're seeing it in multiple countries with the rise of right-wing populism. And I think that's the challenge you're going to have, even though it will stabilize. Ships will avoid the Straits of Hormuz. You already see pipelines being built by the UAE. But the choice of these countries to use war as a means of policy without respecting law, the UN, Security Council, or elsewhere, is increasing the cost to these very governments, and that will be passed on to the families and consumers. And the worst effect, let me just finish by saying, the worst affected countries by this will not be the US. The worst, which is an oil producer, has an oil surplus of its own, the worst affected countries by this will be the poorest countries in the world, who are deeply, deeply vulnerable to supply shocks, whether it's fertilizer or oil or so on. And these countries are the victims of this economic warfare that is being fought right now.
Perfect. And let's now shift to another point, perhaps the cracks that analysts are talking about in the Western camp. And here we can talk about NATO and the public opinion in Europe. And here I go back to you, Dr. Pietrczak. The US Congress has rejected, as you said, the war, and also the 10 resolutions aimed at curbing Trump's war powers. But the Republican defections are growing. We can talk about many figures in the House who actually justified the reversal by stating the administration pretended hostilities were over while maintaining the blockade. Do you think this rebellion is something that is going to be, let's say, a passing symptom, or it is actually a sign of structural rupture within the Republican Party on the eve of the midterms? How do you see it as an observer?
Karim, this is an excellent question. I need to tell you that. Let me just refer to a couple of points which were made by by the speakers who spoke before me. I completely agree that the Operation Epic Fury is a complete disaster, and the example of that is the fact that the Strait of Hormuz is still blocked, and for this reason we are all facing the consequences. We all pay more at the pumps, and for sure this is affecting not only the Western societies, the African societies, Asian societies, Latin America, but also the most affected people around the world, the people from developing world. Around 20% of global oil passes through Hormuz. So like my predecessor basically said, this is basically affecting the supply of the fertilizer, agriculture exports, assistance to the people, to the countries which actually need. And well, Congress sees that. The congressmen, the people the people back home in the United States definitely will use this against Donald Trump, and possibly we will see the impeachment. And this is something which is completely natural, because let's be honest, the failure of the bringing the exit strategy out of the war in Iran is evident. Trump administration announced the mission accomplished, defeating Iranian army, but in all honesty, Iran has all of the cards. By blocking Hormuz, the Strait of Hormuz, they are blocking the whole economy, the global economy. So yes, China is affected, Europe is affected, everyone is affected, and everyone wants this war to end. Everyone wants the conflict to terminate, and that will motivate a lot of people in Congress to basically, rebel even from Republican Party. Republican Party will definitely rebel against Donald Trump, because the man is uncontrollable for sure. And I'm not saying that just to criticize him. From humanitarian perspective, basically, look what is happening with the Department of War. Basically, the Department of War is basically making some claims which are completely out of reality. they are suggesting that they won the war, but well, how can you win the war if you haven't achieved any military objectives? On the top of that, the Iranian regime is still in power. The same happens in Venezuela, basically. Yes, Maduro was removed from power, but the regime which actually supported him is still in power. So, you know, this is very characteristic to the US military strategy around the world, that they start wars, just like the war in Afghanistan. You know, the war in Afghanistan started in 2001. To remove Taliban and Al-Qaeda from power. And who is in charge of Afghanistan at the moment? Taliban 2.0. So, you know, what kind of success is that? I doubt that the American people are happy about it. On the top of that, Donald Trump won the second term in power because he promised his people that he will stop all of the conflicts, the unnecessary US involvement in various places around the world. For the first 12 months of his presidency, he started the Board of Peace. He suggested that he will end the war in Ukraine in one day. He decided to announce to the people that he is responsible for bringing peace to Gaza. In the meantime, he starts the war in Iran, or he continues what Benjamin Netanyahu is telling him to do. So I don't know what kind of strategy is that, but he is definitely destroying the US credibility around the world. On the top of that, he's destroying the credibility of NATO, because United States is the strongest NATO member. So we are all wondering what is happening with United States. Ever since January the 20th, you know, the man is basically uncontrollable. He demands Greenland from Denmark. He threatens Panama. And he's inviting the genocidal war criminal Vladimir Putin to meet him in Alaska. So, you know, from my perspective, any sensible American politician would just unite against this political politician, just to bring the end of war.
Thank you,
So,
Dr.
yes,
Pierre.
I have contradicted
clear.
myself, but this is the point of this is a very interesting, very peculiar moment in time in global politics. That's basically we seek for the leadership, we seek for the people who could restore some credibility to Western leaders, and American people choose the most controversial politician to lead them. And
perfect.
NATO
Point clear, Dr. Pietrsak. Let me now move to Mr. Mohammed Chris Sassi. Since you mentioned Dr. Pietrsak, NATO, this question is to you, Mr. Mohammed Chris Sassi, where we notice, for example, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk denouncing the ongoing disintegration of their alliance. Spain closing its airspace and bases to US aircraft involved in the Iran war. And also we have the German Chancellor Merz criticizing the absence of an exit strategy. Iran is right by calling the war illegal, because by all terms it is illegal, and also asserts that international law is dead in practice. So are we witnessing the end of NATO as a fighting alliance, Mr. Mohammed Chris Sassi, leaving perhaps behind nothing but an empty bureaucratic shell?
Well, I think it would be premature to declare that the end of NATO, but the kind of political fragmentation, as you are just describing, are disturbing. And also, when you talk about Spain refusal to allow the allow the use of airspace and the base for U.S. operation connected to the war in Iran, is not a trivial disagreement inside the alliance. Is directly affect operational logistic and signal that at least some European government are unwilling to follow the craziness of Mr. Trump. Yes, at the same time, if I may say, there are important distinctions between the two. One, NATO is a collective defense pact conceived like stipulated, I think, in Article 5, especially against Russia. And NATO, the second point, is a coalition platform for out-of-area military operation led by United States. And this is where, as you said, and as you know, we are noticing, you have a difference. You talk about Spain and other countries that say, Italy, for example, you don't want this war. But now, at one point, they are not the same thing, but many European governments still see NATO as indispensable for deterring Russia. Russia still a threat for Europe. I can talk about that maybe later on, but just to, because I know we are the time is against us. So as I said, many European governments see NATO as indispensable for being in defense against any attack. As I said, America in NATO still the deterring against Russia. Particularly the country, and one of the gentlemen was saying on the Baltic and also Poland. Now, even government criticize the Iran war as generally not advocating withdrawal from NATO, but instead they are drawing a line between defense alliance territory and supporting discretionary US intervention abroad. Like you said, it's illegal war. NATO doesn't want to go through it, of a member of the NATO, because it's illegal. And Israel, which is not part of NATO, but America did go to war no matter what. And then the distinction, as I was saying, between the two, as often operating through coalition of the alliance and within the alliance, rather than unanimous military participation. Now, I don't know when, I know we are probably by the time, but you have also other member of NATO that very, very, very important, like Turkey, for example. And you see that Turkey was not in agreement with what was America was doing, and they were part of the coalition who went to Pakistan. So this we talked about it before. So I'm not going to.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed Krissassi. Thank you so much. We have actually reached the end of this show, but I would like to give a final word to Dr. Salman. Dr. Salman, briefly, if we come to talk about what happened, a veteran New York Times journalist, David Sanger, he's actually a White House and national security correspondent for 40 years, respected by intelligence community. He was accused of treason by President Donald Trump for reporting, based on U.S. intelligence data, that half of Iran's missiles had survived the strikes. Treason is a capital crime, as you know, in the United States. By criminalizing fact-based journalism, is the administration seeking to lock down public debate in order to conceal perhaps what military itself knows, that this war is not won and cannot be won?
Karim, it's an excellent example. Look, the answer again is yes. But what's interesting in this is not succeeding. So we said before that the first Gulf War was the first televised war. What we're seeing now is there's not one aspect of the political maneuvering around the war with Iran that isn't out in the public within minutes. It's in the markets even quicker, but it's out in the public within minutes. The deal was, with the essential role of the US and with NATO, was the US was allowed to become the dominant supreme military power around the world. In exchange, it protected the right to economic competition, the human rights of its population and others all over the world. And that's what made the US a superpower. That's what led to US's riches over the last 70 years. The accusation of treason against free independent journalists like David Singer should be seen not just as a domestic threat in the US, and it will fail because this information will come out, but should be a very worrying trend, as the previous speakers have spoken, to the overall trust that anybody can have in the US as a superpower right now. So it is an attempt to control the information flow, because of all the problems the war is having, and because the midterms are coming up. But I think it's the failure of that attempt that is going to have more lasting repercussions, both on the trust of the US, by its own media, but also in the ability of the US to declare victory and move on, which it is trying to do in multiple theaters right now. And I think Iran, unfortunately, has the world in a very tight grip because of the fact that the US is not able to declare victory, and the cards are not in their hand at the moment. And that's the violation of rights is a mistake.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jago Salman. Thank you. Unfortunately, this brings us to a close with this show. My thanks to all my panelists tonight. To Dr. Sela Vidashovin, we apologize for that technical issue we had. Dr. Jago Salman, thank you again for agreeing to be with us and for the sharp analysis and your participation. Dr. Piotr Sak, also thank you so much for agreeing to be with us and for your participation. Mr. Mohammed Krissasi, thank you as well for all the contributions that you have made in this month, or over 2 months since the war started. So the questions here we raised tonight hang unanswered by those who hold the power, actually. As our guests have illuminated, the global landscape is being reshaped before our eyes. A fragile ceasefire persists, but the deadlock remains. Washington demands the dismantling of Iran's nuclear infrastructure and the handover of enriched uranium. Tehran demands security guarantees in return that let's say, a trust deficient America cannot actually or will not provide. In the energy markets, the Strait of Hormuz remains a weapon. Despite the American blockade, Tehran has discovered it holds the ultimate strategic lever, and the global economy is caught in the crossfire. The costs are mounting, not only at the pump, but in the slow unraveling of the international order built on the ashes of the last World War. From the diplomatic collapse in Beijing to the battlefields of Lebanon and Gaza, the world is witnessing the painful birth of a multipolar reality in which Western double standards are no longer merely noted, but actively and successfully resisted. That's all for us here at All 24 News. Thank you for watching, and until next time, have a good one.